Before we begin, check out my new Patreon page with videos too spicy for YouTube. I highly recommend subscribing. I'll post few times a week. Story: when I was younger, my grandfather used to tell me that loving a woman wholeheartedly could be one of the greatest mistakes a man makes, but I used to think he was drunk and spoke under the influence of alcohol. But after everything that happened to me, I now agree that sometimes loving a woman wholeheartedly and ruined men. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua, 36, and I was deeply in love with my ex-girlfriend, Nellie, 37. This is not the regular romance story. But Nellie and I first met online. You know when you have an online crush and you like all of her photos, react to her jokes, and leave heartwarming comments on her posts. This was how our love story started, although she never reacted to my photos or posts like I did to hers. I didn't really mind. For almost a year, we were just online friends, and I noticed her when she was trying to bring her dormant Facebook account back to life. After getting her to notice me for that whole year, the year she became active again by posting often. I started sending direct messages, and we would occasionally talk about the things she loved or something she posted and needed people's opinion on. From there, we got to know ourselves better on a personal level, and we started hanging out whenever we had the time to. Nellie was a nurse in our state hospital, and I worked as a marketer for a marketing organization. This is to say that we both had hectic jobs, but we tried our best to meet regularly, especially on the evenings she wasn't working. We started out as friends, and she was nice to me even when she suspected I had a crush on her. As time passed, we got closer, told each other things, and we both introduced each other to our friends. 2 months after Nellie and I started hanging out regularly, I expressed my feelings to her, and I told her I wanted her to be my girlfriend. I was expecting her to say yes immediately, but she didn't. She insisted that we remained friends for a while so we could get to know each other more. And because I didn't have a lot of options, I had to agree. Within the months, we remained just friends. I learned a lot about her, and I understood her personality. She was Gemini and I was Aries. I had to because we used to butt heads a lot, and we were hardly on the same page. There was even a time I thought things would not work out between us in future because we both wanted different things. For example, Nellie insisted that if we dated, we would get married in less than a year so we could have kids. But that wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted a girlfriend who wouldn't pressure me to get married to her, and would allow things to flow naturally and happen at the right time. It wasn't about the money. We both earned decent amounts monthly, and with our finances together, we could create a family. I didn't want to be rushed because in the past, I had a girlfriend who was manipulating me and putting ideas in my head about marriage. We had only dated for 7 months. And when I told her I wasn't ready, she dumped me the next day. And before the year ran out, I saw her pre-wedding photos on Instagram. I was really hurt, and I didn't want to build a relationship on the grounds that it would lead to marriage. I loved Nellie a lot, and I wanted us to enjoy the moments we would spend with each other without feeling choked or under any sort of pressure. Eventually, after almost a year of being friends, she accepted to be my girlfriend. Before she did, I made sure we talked about everything, including her marriage expectations, and we reached an agreement. She promised to not bug me about marriage so things could flow naturally. I don't know if this was my mistake, but about a week after she said yes to me, I asked her to move in with me throughout the time we remained as friends. We respected our boundaries and didn't do anything out of order. When it came to showing affection, the only thing I was allowed to do was either a kiss on the cheek or her hand. She didn't even sleep over at my place, no matter how many times I insisted, and I respected that. When she moved in with me, a lot of things changed. First, I was a happier man because I had been without a girlfriend for 3 years. And I was afraid of getting heartbroken again. Also, Nellie was a very clean person, and she helped in cleaning the house and cooking. Life was also easier because we split bills 50-50 and I saved more money. We were like kin and we supported each other all the time. I tried my best to be a good boyfriend and I took care of her like a queen. When business was good for me, I would buy her things without her asking when she was free at work. We would go on mini vacations or do something fun with each other. We dated for 3 years, and for the first 2 years, we never had any serious issues like cheating or doing anything that would break trust. I was careful not to hurt her with my words or actions, and I reduced how I hung out with my female friends and colleagues at work. On the other hand, Nellie was also respectful. She never raised her voice on me. She knew how much I hated it. Took great care of me in our home, and she was great in bed too. She would occasionally give me and take me out for treats, and I appreciated all of that. On our 2nd year anniversary, I pulled a very big surprise, and I proposed to her. I knew it was what she wanted. And so far, she ticked the important boxes, and I knew she was good wife material and would make a great wife. We didn't start our wedding preparation immediately, but I promised her we would get married before we clocked 3 years together, and she was cool with that. Unfortunately, 3 months after I proposed to Nellie, the coronavirus struck and I stopped working. Nellie was still working because she was a nurse, and her expertise was really needed at that season. So while Nellie worked and earned, I was forced to survive on my savings. And by the time the whole stay-at-home phase was over, I was completely broke. Not just that. There was a lot of at the organization I worked for, and I was laid off alongside other marketers. And because I didn't have a plan B or expect my company to fire at the time they did, things got so tough for me. All my savings were gone. I had no job, and I was forced to depend on Nellie until I got back on my feet. I won't say it was easy because it wasn't. There were nights I couldn't sleep because I was constantly thinking. I applied to other organizations, but they were barely hiring. Nellie did her best to foot the bills without complaint, but her character started to change. The first thing I noticed was that she stopped cooking and would usually eat before she returned home. And most times I would have to make my own food. Then she started working more hours to cover up the bills, but the more she did, the more distant we became. I didn't want that strain on our relationship, and I knew it was no easy thing for her to take care of a grown-up man like so. So instead of waiting to get hired by other marketing organizations, I registered and turned my car to an Uber. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but I had to. I also started doing deliveries and collaborated with some eateries that needed a delivery man. The first time I told Nellie about my decision to start from scratch and work with what I had, she kicked against the idea and said it wasn't befitting for me and I wouldn't earn as much as I used to. I told her I thought about all of that and the main reason I decided to be an Uber driver was because I didn't want her to bear the burden alone, and after much convincing, she agreed. With my new job as an Uber driver, I felt better about myself and I was able to take care of some bills. It wasn't much, but it was better than letting Nellie overwork herself and burn out. I also tried to be available on the nights. She wasn't working, so we would spend time together, and slowly that year finished with no wedding plans. The following year, Nellie began to bug me about getting married, and I sensed it would happen because as of that time, we were supposed to be married like I promised. Initially, when the whole bugging started, I was pissed that she was being insensitive and it caused a lot of fights between us. She knew I had lost my job the previous year and I was struggling to get back on my feet. I expected her to look around her and think like an adult. But she didn't. She just kept bugging me. Somehow, our fights escalated and she moved out of the house. I knew the reason she was insistent on getting married was because she wanted children, and her biological clock was ticking. At that time, I was not ready to get married. Talk more of having kids. My life was literally upside down, and I wanted to make some things right before settling down. After she moved out, we became more distant and sometimes I had to rely on her Facebook post to know what was going on with her. I even tried to talk to her and make things right, and she insisted that the only time she would move back into my house was if I married her. After trying to persuade her and it didn't work, I asked her to give me till the end of the year, and we would get married, but she wasn't having it. So our relationship began to feel like a long-distance relationship even when we lived in the same town in the US. As time passed, we began to see each other less, and every time I asked if I could visit her at her house, she would either tell me she was busy or she already had plans for the day. I felt like she was neglecting me and forgetting all the promises she made. If I called her, she would let her phone ring and go to voicemail and would read my messages on Facebook Messenger without responding. All of these took its toll on me, most especially the distance between us. We had never been apart from each other except on the days she went to visit her parent or go for a wedding. And I had to adapt to a lot of things. When I couldn't take it anymore, I tried talking to her parents and best friend to talk to her, but it didn't work. It resulted in another big fight, and she told me in anger that if I wanted to be a man, I knew the right thing to do to even show how I was willing to make things right again. I went to the state hospital. She worked it several times, but she refused to see me. Her colleagues knew we were together, and from all they had seen, it was evident something was wrong. When months passed and things were not getting better, I got tired and relented, hoping that she would get back to her senses and reach out to me, but that never happened. Instead, I got the shock of my life. That day, I had gone to deliver pizza to a house at the edge of a ghetto neighborhood. And when I rang the doorbell, guess what? Nellie answered. She was so high that she forgot to wear a blouse before opening door. I don't think I can express how shocked I was to see her there after many months of her avoiding me. I can't even recall when the pizza box fell out of my hand. I remember was that I was boiling in anger and yelling at her at the same time, and the craziest thing was she didn't even recognize me until I started yelling. Guys, I cried. I shed tears like a baby because the woman I loved and I was working my arse out to save up for our wedding was standing half naked with just her panties in another man's house. At the same time, I was yelling at her for betraying me like that, and trying to pull her out of the house. A huge muscular black guy appeared from behind her and jumped on me immediately. He was so big that he could easily win a bodybuilder's competition, and looking at the both of us, he was the giant and I was the child. As he jumped on me, I tried to defend myself, but he was far stronger. I do remember him giving me the first blow, and the second blow made me pass out. By the time I woke up, I was lying by the side of the road, and my entire body was in pain. My eye was swollen and my nose and lips were bleeding. I managed to call the police to report an assault, and when they arrived, they called an ambulance immediately. Before the ambulance arrived, the police broke into the house and tried to arrest the black guy for assaulting me, but he resisted the arrest and they were forced to tase him several times. Inside the house, they also found different kinds of drugs, and Nellie was lying passed out at the door. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics said my skull had been broken in several places, and I was taken to the hospital immediately. Later on, I found out the guy that assaulted me was a drug dealer and he was given a jail term. Nellie was also charged until date. I don't know how she got herself mixed up in all of that. After Nellie was arrested and charged, my world was shattered. I was so heartbroken and I even became depressed. She was the woman I wanted a future with, and I did everything possible to make that future happen, but she cheated on me and ruined everything. I eventually moved on, but it took me almost a year to forget about her. It's been years now, and I am fully recovered from the injuries I got, but I don't think I will be entering another relationship anytime soon. The biggest lesson from this story is, of course, to subscribe to my channel as well as like and comment your opinion under the video. Everything helps for the algorithm.